Greg with the Ashcraft firm, and today I want to talk to you about asset protection. So, asset protection, there's a lot of mystery surrounding this area of law. And really, when it comes to asset protection, there's kind of a spectrum of different things that you can do to protect your assets. So, there's your spectrum. So, it ranges from the things that you know are going to happen that you need to protect your assets against to the things that you might not know or you might suspect might happen someday. So, if you look, the first thing that we want to plan for is there's two things: your eventual incapacity or death. Okay, so we know all of us at some point are going to pass away. So really, I think a good place to start your asset protection is on a living trust. And a living trust helps you to avoid not only getting through the court system, going through the probate system when you pass away, but it also guards against incapacity. So if you are incapacitated, and normally your estate would be going to the probate court to deal with that, if you have a trust and an estate plan set up that protects your assets, then you won't end up in probate court. Okay, so I think that's the first step to really putting together a good asset protection plan for you. The next step might be a corporate formation, some kind of corporate entity. Corporate entity. And a corporate entity could be anything like an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp. There's a lot of different ways that you can set up a corporate entity. Now, you will want to talk to a business attorney to decide which one of these four entities are the best for you to form. You also want to talk to a CPA to talk about how they can protect you from getting a lot of taxes. But as far as asset protection, a corporate entity essentially creates a silo for your assets. So let's say that you have a bunch of rental properties, and you have 3 properties here, and the equity in those 3 properties all equal $1 million. So you have $1 million of equity in this LLC silo. If you start acquiring more properties, maybe you don't want to lump them all together, because if somebody has a slip and fall or something like that and they sue you, any of these assets would be susceptible to that lawsuit. So instead, you can actually create multiple silos for your assets to hold different properties. So that way, if something happens here, it doesn't subject all of your property to that same lawsuit. Now, another thing that you might think of is an umbrella policy. So an umbrella policy will protect you if you get a lawsuit, any kind of lawsuit. And you can get umbrella policies that will cover all sorts of things. So that's a really important thing to think about when you're talking to your insurance provider. Probably the same person who gives you your car insurance and your renter's insurance or your homeowner's insurance or whatever it is can actually provide you with an umbrella policy as well. And they will need to review all of your policies in order to create an effective umbrella over all of your assets, because all of your individual insurances need to reach a certain level for that umbrella policy to actually have effect. So you probably want to have somebody who can look at all of them and review it. Sometimes you can actually get it for cheaper if you're bundling everything up to begin with. So that's a great way to start. This is kind of a low cost way to protect yourself. And really, I said it's a spectrum. These are kind of interchangeable. I don't know which you want first, an umbrella policy or a corporate entity. If you do have some kind of corporation that is hyper litigious, let's say you're a doctor or something like that, then you probably want to create that corporate entity first. Now, if you are in something that isn't super litigious, then the assets that you hold there in that corporate entity you may want to do an umbrella policy first instead. So, and then after the umbrella policy, this is where it's kind of clouded in mystery. And part of the reason is because California law doesn't really like asset protection. So here in our state, there's a lot of issues that you have to contend with. So, but in other states, you can have a domestic asset protection trust. And a domestic asset protection trust is a trust where you've chosen a state here in the United States to hold your property and to hold that trust. And you actually can transfer assets into this trust. And it will offer you some protection. The reason that people choose a domestic asset protection trust is because they're a little bit nervous about making any other kind of maybe an offshore trust. And usually these are more expensive and more difficult to set up and more expensive to administer over year after year. So you can create a domestic asset protection trust. The problem is that there are certain holes that the Constitution pokes into this kind of trust. So an offshore trust is actually your best bet because, of course, the Constitution doesn't apply to other countries. However, it is costly. It is more difficult to set up than a domestic asset protection trust. Now, there are firms that I work with that actually can create a bridge trust where you have all the benefits of having a domestic asset protection trust, but if you need to flip the switch, you can actually go to an offshore trust. Now, this kind of planning is very advanced. And so you definitely can't just go online and create it. Honestly, I've seen so many people, most people need it. If you have a minor child that's receiving life insurance, or if you have any kind of real property, then you need a living trust. Now, this is complex enough that I see people go online and try and do it, and they mess it up all the time, and they actually end up making their plan more difficult rather than less difficult, which is the whole purpose of a trust to begin with. You just can't even find an online source to do this because partly it's more complex, fewer people do it, and there are certain rules about how you can transfer the property into that to adequately protect your assets. So, but I hope this was pretty eye-opening about the different types of asset protection you can use on your property. Stay tuned and I'll actually talk to you about different types of asset protection that you can provide, not just for you, but for your descendants and your family. Thanks so much.